Hey, everyone. Welcome back to Bigfoot Society Live. I see a few people in the chat. Thanks for hanging out. And going to do a quick intro as we have people start to come in. Let's see. I see we've got my buddy Greg, weird. Greg, let me know if you hear me over the audio portion side of things here. Let me know if that sounds all right. Let's see. We've also got our friend Mothman 46. Let's go. Awesome. In a few minutes, we're going to bring on our guest tonight. We got Tobias Wayland. I've got the okay from Greg. He says we are good to go audio wise. That's always a touch and go. But thanks for that, Greg. So before and this is to anyone who is watching this later on, of course, make sure that you are subscribed to this channel. Go ahead, if you wouldn't mind liking this, and also hit the bell icon so you can know whenever we go live as well. Also, to anyone who is watching on Facebook, make sure that you do what it says in the comments. Go to the link there, and I'll pretty much allow Facebook to give your name over to StreamYard so that I can see who it is if you ask me a question. If not, I'll have no idea who you are. So I know, kind of wordy, but that's how it goes. So we're going to do an interview with Tobias first. If anyone has any questions, of course, feel free to put those in the comments, and I will be getting to those as we go further along. But let's start out by talking to my friend Tobias here. I'm going to go ahead and bring him on. Tobias, hello. How's it going?
Hey, great. How are you?
Doing well. Okay, everyone, we have on the podcast as well, we have Mr. Tobias Wayland from the Singular Fortean Society. I said it like I wake up in a cold sweat about pronouncing that. Did I get it right this time?
No, that was really good. That was really good. I can
I am
tell
so paranoid. I don't know. That word just gets me every time, but it's all
At
right.
least you didn't say 14. A lot of people say 14, and I'm like, I don't
That's
know.
what I have it phonetically spelled out on my paper over here. Tobias is a good friend. We have never met. Hopefully someday, maybe you'll get down to the Van Meter Visitor Festival, or maybe I'll get up there and I mean, you had the Beast of Bray Road conference first time this year, so we'll have to chat about that. But so you are another Midwest researcher, content creator, journalist, investigator, all the good stuff from the great state of Wisconsin. And just to give some background, you are, I would say, you're known for a few things. Singular Fortean Society course online, which is singularfortean.com, correct? And then most people will actually might know you from your work with the Lake Michigan Mothman. And you are getting really all over the place with that. You've started to get on different shows like Expedition X, and you'll be in an upcoming release, I believe, from Small Town Monsters, correct, as well.
Yeah.
So are there any other things that people should know about you before we start chatting, Tobias?
The only thing I guess I might add is, this is actually my second Small Town Monsters production. I was interviewed for Terror in the Skies because they actually had a section on the sightings around Chicago. Now, of course, that documentary was made in 2018, and at that time, the investigation was even more so than today, really centered around and best known for that Chicagoland area. And so that was sort of the focus of at least my portion of that particular documentary, which itself really was all about just weird winged creatures in Illinois. So it wasn't just all Mothman stuff. They had Thunderbirds and things like that. So, but yeah, otherwise, I think you got it.
Fun fact about Terror in the Skies. synchronicity alert. Here we go. I was also in Terror in the Skies, but you just didn't see me. I was the one that I was the one interviewing like Chad Lewis in his part, and
Oh, right.
Steve Ward, I believe, as well. But that was a great documentary. Big fan of it. It actually got me into all this weird stuff to begin with. One of the big things, because I was like, this is really fun asking people questions. Maybe I should do this in the future. So, our buddy Greg says, "Hey, happy birthday, Tobias, dude! For
Thank
real.
you so much, Greg.
You know,
it was
Greg's
my birthday.
is the coolest dude.
Actually.
He knows the details of like he's an awesome people guy. Like he's a good dude. All right. We got Tobias Wayland here. There's your banner. Okay, so let's get chatting. So the first thing I wanted to talk to you about, of course, is actually your new book. Let's talk about Strange Tales of the Impossible. So give me a summary. First off, like what was it that made you want to write this book?
Sure. So, after the Lake Michigan Mothman high strangeness in the Midwest, I didn't want people to just sort of associate us with just that Mothman investigation, because the reality of it is we investigate all types of anomalous phenomena, and as a result, we have this pretty large number of case files of weird things that we've investigated. And I couldn't help but notice while investigating these seemingly disparate phenomena that there were a lot of really odd recurring commonalities like between them. And so, when I was sort of thinking about what I wanted to do next, like what the next book is that I wanted to write, I thought, well, in sort of the true Fortean spirit, why not just throw everything that we have so far together and try to make any kind of sense of it and speculate about it, like Charles Fort might have, and that gave us, Strange Tales of the Impossible, which really runs the gamut from everything from winged humanoid sightings to UFOs to ghosts and hauntings, to other cryptids and even weirder stuff. I mean, one of the stories in there that I collected from a witness was of being chased through seemingly living woods by a humanoid on a flying moped.
Whoa.
Right.
Let's back up. So you said seemingly living woods?
Yeah, that was okay. Like there's so many elements of high strangeness here. And this was probably the strangest aspect. And I don't mean to laugh. I don't want people to think I don't take this seriously, because I did talk to this guy, and he was very serious about his encounter. But sometimes this stuff is so weird that you literally just have no choice, and you have to laugh at it a little bit. But I like to think that we're just sort of laughing, with each other, not at any witnesses or anything.
Exactly.
Anyway,
how wild it is. All you can do, like that's how I react.
Just throw your hands up and laugh a little bit. Yeah, it's just shrug. But anyway, so during this encounter, he talked about how the trees were swaying, really, really violently, and it didn't seem like the wind was causing that, because there wasn't wind that could cause that. And so it seemed to him as though the trees were sort of coming alive while he was like during his encounter with this thing, while he was trying to get the heck out of there.
Wow. And this is one of the coolest parts about this is an account that was told to you directly, is what it sounds like.
Yes, it was. Yeah, it was told to me directly, and honestly, that's something that I feel very strongly about. Now, I won't generally, well, honestly, I won't ever put my personal credibility on the line for any account that I haven't received directly, spoken to the witness, and been able to investigate it myself.
Yeah.
And I wish everybody did that. I feel like that should be sort of standard, but it isn't necessarily. So when it comes to second or third hand accounts, they are occasionally included for context, and oftentimes, especially in the Lake Michigan Mothman investigation, there was no real way around that, because I was working with other investigators, and not everybody does things the same, and so they might have published an emailed account or something where they weren't able to follow up. And once that happens, now all of a sudden that's part of the canon of this investigation. And I have to deal with that. I have to contextualize that for people. So if and when that does happen, I always make real clear the level of contact that anyone has had with that witness, especially how much contact I have had, because there have definitely been cases where, say Manuel or Lon or somebody gets a report and they say that they've spoken to this witness, and I go, okay, that's great. Like I believe you. I don't know why I personally choose to sort of proceed as though people are telling me the truth unless I have direct evidence to the contrary. So, they'll say, hey, I interviewed this witness or something. I'll say, okay, that's great. Now, is it possible for me to talk to him? And they'll give me contact info. And I'm not always able to get a hold of that witness, especially if it's like an email address or something. And so I have to be very clear about that. And that's something people who are interested in our work over at the Singular Fortean Society, if they're already interested, they probably know that. But if you're listening to this interview and you're like, hey, those stories are cool and I might want to check them out, people should know that I'll let you know how much contact we've had. I'll make sure to contextualize things, using that, because I feel like it's really important. Especially with the advent of the internet, we get a lot of tall tales. There are a lot of people acting like stuff they read anonymously on Reddit is just sort of hand to God true, right?
Yeah,
and
right.
That's just silly. Maybe it is. I can't say it's not, but I'm not going to pretend like I know that it is if it's just some anonymous story that I wasn't able to verify. Come on.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. I gotta address a few things in the chat a little bit. Mothman 46 says Tobias is rocking that crypto hat like a boss. I agree. If you're listening to this on the podcast, holy pronunciation weirdness, podcast, you need to get over to the YouTube page, and this hat is worth the price of admission, which is free.
I wore it specifically for this event as well. I don't normally wear this hat unless I'm outside doing field work. This is just for tonight.
This is a huge deal then. This is huge. Aaron from Hey Strangeness says also Tobias's hat. Of course. I mean, you have to say it. Do you think, this is off the cuff, do you think in order to be an awesome cryptozoologist, you need a hat of some sorts? Loaded question.
I don't. I feel like to keep the sun out of my eyes and maybe, part of my face from getting sunburned, I need a hat to be outside a lot of the time. But no, what you need is an open mind and a good work ethic. And you can do this. Absolutely.
Let's say if you were to get a hat, what kind of hat would you recommend?
Well, I like this one, obviously. A funny story
Stetson?
about that. Yeah, well, okay. Emily and I decided, we were like, we should get new hats, because we find ourselves outside all the time. And we were like, so we're basically shopping, and we're like, okay, let's just each pick out one hat, and
Nice.
And we'll just order them. It'll be fine. And we picked out the same hat, only hers is brown, and
no
mine
way.
Is right. So,
Dude.
Obviously that's a match made in heaven.
It really is. Real. It really is. Thanks for taking that little detour for me here. Before we get any further, let's backtrack a little bit, because I have all the information of where I've talked to you before, but there might be a listener who really is just listening to this podcast because it has the word Bigfoot in it and is like, who's this Tobias character? I'm confused. Could you what is the Singular Fortean Society? Let's start there and kind of paint
Sure.
the picture of what we're dealing with for listeners.
Yeah, definitely. So the Singular Fortean Society is an investigative and journalistic organization founded by myself and my wife Emily in 2016. And so, if you're not familiar with the word Fortean, that comes from Charles Fort, who was an early 20th century collector of weird news stories. And sort of what he would do is he would take these weird stories from all over the world, he would compile them into these massive volumes, and he would sort of speculate about the nature of these phenomena, find commonalities, make connections, often very tongue-in-cheek insights. And I really like his approach to these subjects. We don't often joke as much as he did, but I think there's definitely a place for that in investigation. But really, it was more sort of his style of finding the connections between things. So one of his most famous quotes is, "One measures a circle beginning anywhere." And I've always taken that to mean that by studying any aspect of the paranormal, you can understand something about all of it, because there do seem to be these weird connections. So that explains Fortean, which is the most common question, because a lot of people haven't heard Fortean, and I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, why Singular Fortean Society is we wanted to sort of form a community of like-minded individuals, people who sort of approach these subjects the same way that we do. And in singular doesn't mean we're the only Fortean Society out there, because that's not true. But it has another definition, and that is unique or remarkable. And my perspective on that has always been that each person is unique or remarkable, and everybody sort of has this unique perspective that they can add to this field. And so
Nice.
what I really wanted was to have this society of like-minded individuals who don't necessarily always agree on everything, and we shouldn't. That's not how good
Exactly.
free societies work. But everybody's perspective, being unique, contributes. And so out of all of these various perspectives and opinions, and often the debate that arises out of any conflict therein, it allows us to examine these subjects in a way that you don't see very often, I think, because too often in these little communities, you don't get too much pushback. You might get pissing matches between celebrities or something, but
Right.
you don't get just everybody able to put their ideas out there and really talk about it. And so that's really what we were going for, different.
And I love that, because that's actually like so with the whole like Bigfoot Society thing, like a lot of what I try to do is I try to create like a community where people have they have respect, they have the freedom to speak, and you don't necessarily have to agree with the other person, but we can talk to each other like adults. And so I feel like we have done that in places like especially Clubhouse. But definitely, so Singular Fortean Society, the first thing is I love the articles. You're constantly putting it out. I am daily looking for the new news, and I will tell you that your website is like up at the top of my bookmarks that I'm checking daily, because one, I know that you look at it in such a way where you're only putting stuff on there that pretty much like um you're not going to just put garbage up there. You're going to put up stuff that you have looked into to make sure that it's legit and it's a trustworthy source. So I have to give you props for that one, Tobias. It's very cool.
Well, thank you
Also,
so much.
yeah, totally. The other thing, and I've wanted to talk to you this for a while just to see how it works. So you have a really cool like community through your Patreon, and I love like studying communities in this niche for some reason. Like it really intrigues me. And I saw a picture or two. So you have it as one of your things where your group can actually go on expeditions or like investigations on, like, how does that work? Like, kind of explain that to me. That's cool.
Sure. Well, I mean, that was one of the things where, again, too often in this community, you see, writers or television personalities or investigators or whatever sort of try to put themselves at the top of these weird hierarchies, and you see these
Right.
cults of personality, right? And I was that's something that we've always wanted to avoid. And so, I was like, well, who do we want in the Singular Fortean Society? Well, people interested in this stuff who actually want to be a part of it, who want to get out and investigate. Now, if your interest isn't in field work or actually going out and investigating, that's fine too. I don't mean to sound like elitist, as though only certain people are allowed to like this stuff. But fundamentally, something that we always wanted to do was to be able to go out and investigate with
Mm.
those members who actually want to do that. And so we had our first in-person investigation last month, and it went pretty well. We recruited a couple of our friends, Adam Benedict from the Pine Barrens
Oh yeah,
Institute,
sure.
and
Yeah.
Jay Bachochin,
Ape
the
Ocean, dude.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's
Solid
great.
guy.
He's a good friend of ours.
He's
Yeah,
so good.
absolutely.
We
He
hung
is.
out all that Saturday at the festival at Van Meter. It was
Oh,
great.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Nice. And so, because and we go out into the woods with Jay as often as we can, and
Mm.
so we kind of talked to him, and we were like, "Hey, you want to go out into the kettle?" And he was a little reluctant until I explained to him sort of what the point was. I wasn't interested in bringing a lot of strangers out there or anything, because these
Right.
are his research areas, and he doesn't want a bunch of people just sort of bumbling around necessarily. But no, I explained to him that we had society members, and that of course these were people that we knew, and that we've been speaking to and sort of collaborating with in a lot of ways, and so we just sort of coordinated with them. One of our members came all the way from Georgia, and
Wow,
yeah,
really?
it's one of those things where it's
Oh,
like, hey,
wow.
get here and we will go investigate. I promise.
Yeah.
If you can get here, we will
Oh
go
my
out.
goodness.
And then everybody else came from maybe an hour or 2, 3 hours away,
Yeah.
and we went out, and it was sort of a hesitate to use the word standard investigation because they're all sort of unique.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, we went out into the kettle, and we did some sky watching, performed a CE5 experiment, and yeah, it was an interesting night. It was a weird night. I think everybody sort of got what they were looking for, in terms of investigative experience, sort of seeing what it's really like. A lot of it is just sitting in the dark with with people that to varying degrees, and that's just it just is what it is. And some weird stuff happened, because some weird stuff always happens.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was a good time.
So I know I have more than a few Bigfoot friends right now that you said a few things that they're like, wait, huh? What? Those aren't wood knocks and youps and howls and whatevs. So can you define for the listeners sky watching and CE5?
Sure.
Yeah.
So let me preface this by saying I am willing to try almost anything when it comes
Okay.
to investigating. And that doesn't mean that I am, operating on faith. Doesn't mean that I necessarily believe in something. But it does mean that I'm very open minded, and I'm willing to do anything, anything ethical
Mm.
in order to, investigate paranormal or ufological or cryptozoological or whatever phenomena. So, what a CE5 experiment or the CE5 process is, it's used in ufology, and CE5 is for close encounter of the fifth kind, and what that is supposed to be is contact sort of facilitated or initiated by a human being. And so sort of the idea behind it is that you sort of put yourself in the right mindset, almost an altered state of consciousness to facilitate contact with these otherworldly beings, right?
Wow.
And there's an app that you can buy, and I just bought it myself. And then I was like, nobody else buy this. I already bought it. It's fine. And you can use it. Well, because come on, like how much money do they need? It's like one of us has the app. And you go through this app, and you play these crop circle tones, which I'm not sure what crop circle tones are.
Okay.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like I don't know, like birds imitating old school like NES music.
Nice, dude.
It gets the birds going. Like they respond to it. Yeah, no,
okay.
that was interesting. I don't think there's anything weird about that. I think it just it just sparked their interest. But so you play these crop circle tones for a while, and then you meditate for 20 minutes, and that's what we did. I wasn't gonna cut any corners or anything, certainly. And this is actually the second time that we had done this, because the first time it was just Emily and Jay and myself, and we did actually see a pretty interesting UFO. But this particular time, well, and now when I say UFO, don't think
well, I know
flying saucer from another planet. It's just an
you just didn't know what it was.
Yeah. When I say like UFO, I literally mean unidentified flying object. That's it.
Totally.
But yeah, this time we went through the CE5 protocols, I think is what they call them. And yeah, everybody participated, of course. And then, we didn't see, at least I didn't see any sort of anomalous, lights or craft or anything. Probably the closest thing, well, that's not true. I did see one anomalous light, and what that was a couple of flashes of light sort of off in the distance, which at first it was a clear night, but I thought maybe that's some heat lightning or something from a storm front dozens or so miles away that I just can't see. So I hopped on my weather radar and I looked for any cloud formations that could have been in that direction, and there weren't any, not for hundreds of miles. And so that was weird. I don't know what those flashes were, but I didn't see anything like balls of light or anything like that. A couple of other people said that they did. I don't have any reason to disbelieve them, but I didn't get to see it that time. And so, overall, it was an interesting experience. Definitely. It always is.
At the end of the day, it sounds like a really cool experience, and sounds like a really, really cool community. I want to let's see. I got let's throw one question in here. So Greg says, gentlemen, do you feel that the Texas chupacabras should be renamed? This is a controversy going on right now in our Clubhouse community, but I think so. Exactly what we're talking about.
Well, yeah, I mean, okay. Can we just rename all of so there's clearly two types of creature that people call chupacabra.
Totally.
You've got the Puerto Rican one from the what was it, Puerto Rico? Yeah. From the 90s, which is like a weird spiky gray alien. And then you've got, like fangs or something. And then you've got the southwestern United States chupacabra, which is like some kind of dog with mange.
Yeah.
And so, of course it should have some kind of different name, because it couldn't be less of the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And watch Paranormality Magazine's account for more info. They're gonna have a rename the Texas Chupacabra contest. It's pretty solid.
Just call them sad dogs or something. I mean,
sad dog, sad puppy.
Because they got mange, and that we actually our last dog that we adopted. Like she had mange when we got her, and it's truly, it is sad because they're just these little furless
Oh, sure.
dogs.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
she's fine now, of course.
You never want to see an animal in any type of discomfort and pain is
No.
not cool. So yeah, I totally get that. Next question is a really good question. If you can pass if you want to, if it's like it led to an issue where you're like, I really can't name names because it might cause issues. So you're okay to pass if you want to, but let's see. Okay, Greg says, have you caught anyone trying to pull a hoax on you?
Oh yeah, no. Like, what is this, high school?
Yeah.
I would totally name names. That would be the first person. No, if I caught somebody being serious, like that would be a huge ethical dilemma, and the only real dilemma would be if I chose not to say. You know,
that's true.
Yeah, no, I totally have caught people hoaxing. You know, there sometimes we will be approached by people who are less than genuine, and that's why I really insist on you know, us doing our due diligence before I'm willing to put my name behind something, right? You know, often the okay, really one of the like signatures for me of somebody who is completely full of it is there's no repeated contact. So often what hoaxers will do is they'll just have some story and they'll type it out and they'll email it to you. And you know, sometimes it's real obvious and it reads like somebody's, you know, bad creative writing project. But you know, other times it's just in incredible story, and you'll go and you'll say, hey, that's great, like this is really interesting, thank you for sending it my way, but you know, can I talk to you? And then you just don't hear from them, like, ever. And I can't say all of those were hoaxes. Some of them almost certainly are, because again, it really is like something that that some aspiring author would put out on Reddit or something. And maybe some of them are people who just legitimately saw something and for whatever reason weren't willing to follow up on it. In terms of actually, you know, exposing a hoax, there was this person, you know, I don't know, claimed to be a woman. I don't know if they were or not, on Reddit a while back, adding these really interesting videos of like something in their house and talking about like, you know, possible alien contact and all this stuff. And so I wrote this article after chatting with them some, and of course, like I was clear about sort of the level of contact that I had, but also what I do. And this is even after I've spoken to somebody, because at the end of the day, I wasn't there. And if I could prove that what they said happened really happened, you know, like we wouldn't have to have stuff like this, because it would be taught in school and we would all have degrees in paranormality or whatever. And, you know, it would be great. But because I can't, even if it's somebody that I've had extensive contact with, I have to say that this person claimed, you know, such and such happened, you know, whatever. Like you end up having to use the word claim and reportedly and all of these other qualifiers just to let people know that you don't really know if it happened or not, but it might have. This is what they're saying. And so when I wrote this article, of course, that was the kind of language that I used, because this person was claiming that they were a mother with a single mother with a small child, and these little beings were entering their house and they had these videos of them. Well, turns out that it was in boy, what do you call it? Like an altered reality game, I think is what they're called.
Yes,
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And really is it's kind of just a nice way to say liar and people lying for fun, because right, like that's all it was in this case. Like it wasn't really a game so much as somebody just like lying and hoaxing and wanting to be able to have a cooler like name for it. Because when they were eventually caught, because I wasn't the only person interested in this, you know, you had like all of the internet sort of digging into it, and it didn't take, you know, people very long to you know, go through their Twitter account and figure out that something wasn't quite right here. And no hoax is very sustainable either. That's the other thing. hoaxes are identified usually very quickly, especially in this day and age.
Sure.
It is very difficult. Like if you can't start a hoax on the internet, you're going to be figured out within 3 days, probably.
Exactly.
And that's basically what happened here. And of course, the person doing it was all mad because they couldn't understand why people had to ruin their fun. We're just having fun. It's just jokes, guys, right? Like, so what if like this is an issue that has affected thousands of people, and traumatized individuals who have dealt with like this phenomenon. Like, no, like none of it's real. It's fine to worry about it. And so, yeah, of course, like anytime that happens, I will. First thing I'll do is I'll go back and update the original article, and I'll say, hey, this is a confirmed hoax, written in bold at the very beginning. So there's no way you can mistake it for anything else. And then I'll make sure that I have a follow-up article usually, and I'll put a link to the follow-up article, in the original article as well. So then people can go and read about how it was a hoax or whatever. Now that doesn't happen in terms of like direct contact with witnesses very often. It's way more often that I'll see a story circulating and not be satisfied with the coverage of it. And so, journalistically, I'll want to investigate that. And I'll write an article that, will show it to be a hoax. Like, I don't know if you remember that it was like a gargoyle on a telephone pole or something that was going around all over.
No, I think I missed that one. That's interesting.
I'll try to dig it up and send it to you.
Okay.
But yeah, it was one where, it was a video, and it looked pretty cool. And of course, the internet being the internet, the hive of scum and villainy that it is, you had people who found this and were like, oh, hey, I saw this outside on my street. What do you think it is? And it turns out, and it wasn't even that hard for me to find, that it was it was actually this CGI production company who specializes in movie special effects, who had made this video, and it's like on their YouTube channel, and somebody just ripped it off there and decided they were going to pass it around as though it was legit. So most of the hoaxes that we end up covering or that we're involved with in any way are usually that. Every once in a while we'll come across one with actual witness contact, but usually it's just people spreading creepypastas and us wanting to do our
right, exactly,
to kind of stem the tide of BS flowing out of the internet.
Totally. Which, hats off to you. Oh, hey, speaking of hats, so I need to point out, and this is we have a few new people in the chat here. We've got, hey, Strangeology podcast. Jeff says, hey friends, hey buddy, how's it going? Alex has stopped by from Sasquatch Out of the Shadows, says cryptozoologist hat gang strong. All the love tonight for Tobias. And Tate says, that's not a hat, this is a hat. Nice reference. I believe that's a Crocodile Dundee reference.
It was knife.
Right? It's supposed to be knife, but he's mashed it up. Hey, speaking of Tate, make sure that you listeners, you check out my friend Tate Hieronymus's new Bigfoot documentary dropping next Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern time on YouTube. So it's going to be a good one. I think it's uncovering the truth of Sasquatch. Let me know in the chat if I said that wrong, Tate, and my apologize, but whatevs. Let's continue with, of course, we haven't even really touched the subject yet, but so you are becoming very well known for the subject of Mothman, specifically the Lake Michigan Mothman. Start out by so what was it that was there a certain thing that drew you to this particular cryptid, or what started the I mean, it's really just like you are the Lake Michigan Mothman or one of the top guys about it. How did that all come about?
Sure. Purely by chance, honestly.
Okay.
A trio of sightings happened to come through the Mutual UFO Network case management system, and they wrote a short article on it for their website. And at the time, of course, I was writing the news for the Singular Fortean Society, and I saw that, and I thought, hey, this might make an interesting article for our readers. And so I wrote a short article on it and published it. And I didn't think it was going to go anywhere. It really seemed like one of those stories that, you kind of put out there because it's weird and interesting, but you don't really expect it to go anywhere. Honestly, if those had been the only stories or reports that had come out, we wouldn't even be talking about this. Because I talked to Sam Moranto later, who's the state director for MUFON in Illinois, and they really weren't able to contact these witnesses. They had very, very limited contact by email, I think, and so they weren't particularly well investigated, and so there wasn't like that much to them. But as it turned out, those weren't the only sightings. Next thing you knew, you had all of these sightings coming in through Phantoms and Monsters, UFO Clearinghouse.
Sure, yeah.
And I saw those obviously being reported by them, and it having been just after these other sightings, I thought, well, this is interesting. Could this be the beginning of a flap or something? And so, I wanted to reach out to Lon Strickler over at Phantoms and Monsters and Manuel Navarrete over at UFO Clearinghouse personally, see if I could interview them for the website, of course, as I think anybody would, trying to cover this story. And they were both very friendly and sort of welcoming and forthcoming in terms of being interviewed. And so I did that, and it wasn't too long after that due to our proximity to some of these sighting locations and sort of traveling in the same circles, we were asked to actually participate in this investigation. And that made a lot of sense, especially because really by that time we had started getting reports of our own anyway. And so, next thing you know, here we are 4 years later, and reports still come in. Yeah.
What was it that? What was the process of? So you've written the book, The Lake Michigan Mothman. Was there what? How did it come about that you were like, man, there needs to be like a? Did you just feel like, hey, there needs to be a book written about this? This is such a big deal, or what was your thinking about getting that book put together?
Sure. I mean, honestly, part of my reasoning, or really the impetus behind that particular book was internet BS. Frankly, the fact was that there were dozens and dozens of sightings, and I kept seeing misinformation regarding these sightings on the internet, and some of it was from people who just kind of wanted to gatekeep the Mothman phenomenon and poo-poo the whole thing. And then part of it was people just basically playing an extended game of telephone on the internet, because that's how the internet works, where they're just repeating stuff and slowly details get changed and mixed up and they're just telling it wrong. And I thought, well, okay, right now all people have are these, different articles, the dozens of articles that we've written about these sightings, but they don't really have this real comprehensive source of information that you could point to and say, okay, everything you want to know about the sightings, at least as far as what we know, and everything that went into investigating them, especially because that was a point of contention, it's in this book. And so you can look at this single volume and see what everything went into this investigation. Then just make up your own mind whether you believe any of it or think it's worth pursuing. But yeah, I mean that was mostly it for me. It wasn't one of those things where I felt like this was going to be a super fun project for me to work on, and it felt necessary because too often in this field, you get a lot of big egos who want to make these phenomena about themselves.
Exactly.
And the actual experiences of these real human beings, and they are real human beings, I promise you, who have experienced this stuff, it just falls by the wayside. It's just pushed aside by all of these stupid egos. And that's such a huge disservice to these people who, just want help. They want help understanding what's happened to them. And so, allowing this investigation to sort of be relegated to the circus of celebritization was, it just felt gross. It felt gross to me. And I thought, hey, what's the one thing I can do? Well, I can write a book. I spent, 5 figures at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I can at least write a book.
Right. Thank goodness. Yeah. I hear that. And so thankfully, so you've written the book, and I want to say there's a quote out there. First you write the book, then TV comes knocking, or something to that effect.
Something like that. Sure.
Yeah. But the thing is that, so thankfully you've written the book, and you're a guy that actually cares about the people and the stories, and you're able to kind of make sure that the story is being told with respect, almost, on shows such as like Expedition X or like upcoming Small Town Monsters. What has that experience been like, starting to be involved with, getting your message out to a larger audience, or maybe a different audience?
Well, it's working with the cable network production companies. It is a world away from working with somebody like Seth and Small Town Monsters.
Totally. Yeah.
I've talked to way more television producers than I've really worked with, because they'll do this thing where if you have written a book, or you have a really nice website, and you're sort of known in the field, for investigating, where they will try to call you and just like, use you for free information, basically.
Yep. Totally.
And they'll be like, oh, I've got this project that I want to talk to you about. And really all that is they're just like, so what do you think this is? What do you think this is? Who do you think I should talk to about this? Can you get a hold of them for me? And it's just like, I don't work for you, dude. Like, this is, I don't know who you think I am, but yeah. But anyway, and so that sort of, I think, gives people some idea of what the cable networks are really about. And so I did Expedition X, and it was a wonderful experience. Like the crew was great. It was funny, like actually between shots, I was just talking to some of the guys on the crew, and they were telling me about the experiences that they had. Like one guy was telling me that they were shooting in Hawaii for something. I don't remember what. And he had seen like this ghost march, which is like this folkloric Hawaiian
dude,
event that's supposed to happen. Yeah. And I didn't think he was making it up. He, it certainly didn't seem like it. I figure if you're out filming enough of these things, or just traveling enough, you're going to see something. But that was a different experience, because basically what you had is, obviously there were producers kind of getting everybody ready, and crew guys slapping mics on people and telling me I couldn't wear my necklace because it got in the way of my microphone and stuff. Yeah. Small Town Monsters never made me take my Mjolnir off. I'll just say that.
Because Seth is legit. That's why. I'm super big fans of those guys. Super big fans.
Yeah. So, there's a director on set, which I always thought was really interesting, because why should you need one, right? But
true,
you do if you want things to be portrayed a certain way, and so
they're telling a story. Yeah, they want a certain story to be told.
Literally, you'll be up there, and they'll be like, okay, we'll just talk about this, which is fine. Again, very similar to kind of what we're doing now. Only it's not necessarily a question, or they'll be like, hey, you host, like, ask him this or whatever. But
Right.
then, like, and that'll all happen, and that's all normal and organic. But then after that, the director will go, "Okay, that was great. I really liked that. That was a good answer. Felt like the conversation was cool. But could we have done it a little more like this? Like, not exactly like in my words. Put it in your own words. But could
But
we have
even
done this?"
better if.
Yeah. And I'm just like, well, I'm not going to make anything up or lie, but
Absolutely not.
I'll keep repeating things in a slightly different way.
That's
Like
funny.
whatever it takes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So
good for you
you
for
know,
sticking to what you were holding to be true, for sure.
I hope that whatever TV producers don't see this and blacklist me, but at the same time, I don't know. They're not exactly beating down our door anyway at this point. So, um, yeah, it's just people need to know, like when you're watching these cable network shows, like, um, I feel like some of the people involved are definitely like they're interested in these subjects.
Mhm.
But the shows, they're for entertainment, and you need to understand that they're for
Exactly.
entertainment.
That's a really
And
good
so,
point. Yeah.
just take that for what it's worth. And again, not disparaging those shows, because I don't think that they necessarily lie about being entertainment. I just think that they don't necessarily go out of their way to tell people. But at Small Town Monsters, that's a whole other animal.
Totally.
It's a different world. I've never done more than one take when talking to Seth or Heather or anybody. It's literally never happened because they're a legitimate documentary filmmaking production company.
Oh, totally.
And so that's always been a really great experience. I mean, um, it's basically you show up and they have different things that they want to do because they want to present these documentaries in a way that's going to be interesting to people, because it doesn't matter how much factual information you have in a documentary if nobody wants to watch it, right? And so like they'll have different places that you'll talk and everything, and that keeps it interesting for folks. But it's all very legit. It's all clearly made by people who have a real interest in um, being as objective, as unbiased as possible, and in really sort of trying to speak to the nature of these phenomena. They don't really have a preset conclusion that they're trying to work towards, which you will see on different cable network shows. But Small Town Monsters doesn't really do that. It's hey, let's get everybody worth talking to who is actually involved with something, and talk to them, and see if we can talk to some witnesses, and then see what we can dig up, and whatever's there is whatever's there, and viewers can sort of make up their own mind. And it's not, they don't just show up, film for one day, and then there's your documentary. Which honestly, when you're watching a lot of network shows, that's what happens, is they're there for one day. Maybe they've got a film crew that comes in and gets B-roll and stuff like the day before or something.
Yeah.
But that's not Small Town Monsters. Like they're there for as long as it takes. Could be several days, could be a week, whatever. And that's better, like, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, that is what allows them to actually get the kind of information that you're going to see in their documentaries. It's what allows them to dig as deep as they do. And honestly, even before that filming begins, there's layers of research that has
Oh, yeah,
happened.
totally. Yeah, like Heather
Like,
is researching like crazy.
and when you're working with a cable production company, usually, like, the research that they're going to do is, hey, give us everything interesting that you have, and that's basically it. Like, that is to say that they're not really doing any research. They're sort of counting on you to do all of this extra work, and then they'll decide if they want to do anything with it or not.
I will
Which
say this, a lot
is
of
what
them are listening to cryptozoology podcasts right now.
I knew it.
If you are a cryptozoology podcaster, you are being listened to by people you would have you would not even think they are listening, and I'll just leave it there. But you never know what's going to happen in the future. Like
No,
all of a
hey,
sudden, it's going to be like talking heads are now the cryptid podcasters are now the talking heads. It's gonna be crazy. Who knows? They could happen. I could easily see it happening, but
you
you
never
never
know.
know.
And again, I can't stress this enough. I don't want this, hopefully, to come off as me just, crapping on cable network paranormal shows. I mean,
Definitely not.
I'm just trying to talk about the reality of them. I don't think that's the only way to do it, but I do think that's the way that it's done now. And again, if that's your thing, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's not like if they called me tomorrow, I'd say no, I'm never working with you again. Of
Right.
course I would. I'm just never going to compromise myself or my personal ethics.
Which is huge.
anybody
That is
television.
huge.
Yeah.
Yep. I will say for those in the chat, if you have any questions for Tobias as we go along, definitely feel free to put those in. So let's see. What is there a certain story right now that has your attention as an investigator and journalist?
That is a really good question. There are a couple of ongoing storylines, I think. One that's just, it's kind of fun, and I'm sure everybody's interested in it. Although it's probably in my opinion, the least believed in cryptid left is Loch Ness.
Oh
The
yeah,
last
that
few
photo.
years, yeah, well, that just the last couple of years
Yeah,
have
yeah,
been real big for Loch Ness monster sightings, in
totally.
terms of people reporting them. But there's a couple of caveats there. The first is obviously pandemic and that webcam. So I think you've had people who just have an unprecedented amount of time to sit
Oh yeah.
around and watch that Loch Ness webcam for all kinds of rogue waves and floating logs and whatever else they're seeing. But then of course, just beyond that, it's popular, and it's a known tourist location. And so I'd be kind of surprised if the Loch Ness monster ever really went away. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting because you see these reports. Oh, and there's one other part of this too. If it looked like I was thinking for a second, it's because I was trying to remember this. Yeah, no, but there's another part to this. So tabloids in Britain will pay people for their stories. And
Oh wow.
and so
Okay.
yeah, if you've got a compelling photograph, or a snippet of video, or just a real wild tale, they might pay you for it. And so it's enough where people want to come up with this stuff, and so they do. And so the legend of the Loch Ness monster lives on. But yeah, referencing that photo, that came out recently. All credit to Sam Sheeran, obviously.
Oh yeah. He
For
nailed it. Yeah.
like immediately. I had
Yeah.
seen it.
He
And I was
was
like, oh, I
all
gotta
over
look
it.
into this. Yeah, and then like right away, I was like, well, Sam has already solved this, so I'm going to write the article and
Exactly.
put his photo
Yep.
in it, and and credit him, obviously. And that was it. It was open and shut. But it literally, like, he found the toy and everything that
It was wild.
that they could use, to hoax this photo. So what are you going to do? The other big story, which I think is a little more serious, that again has been ongoing. This is ongoing for 4+ years now. Is UFOs and
Oh yeah.
government involvement in their investigation. That's one that I've been following very closely, and it is a mess. I mean, there are so many at this point. There are so many different people with so many different opinions, who are involved or have involved themselves. And it's difficult to kind of unravel all of the separate threads. But I do my best when I'm writing articles, for the Singular Fortean Society about it. But it's interesting from what I've seen following it so far. It sounds like, at least to me, and this isn't the most popular opinion, especially among people who really want to believe, but it doesn't seem like the government is really doing their best to be honest and, and truthful about this.
Not at all.
So it's another one of those lies by omission, where they come out and they say like, this Navy destroyer or whatever, or aircraft carrier saw a bunch of drones that they couldn't identify, and then people are like, oh, like those have to be UFOs, and the government's like, we don't know. And
who knows?
Right, could be anything, right?
Yeah.
I hope you don't let your imagination go wild. And of course it does.
Exactly.
And next thing you know, I mean, it's like the likeliest scenario to me at this point seems like the government having to deal with the issue of like some foreign power who is able to invade our airspace with drones or something.
I know. It's like, which one is better? Like, I don't know, man. Yeah, neither is fun.
Right. But honestly, the other part of that too is that, I mean, I believe in the veracity of eyewitness testimony when it comes to the UFO phenomenon. And so, I've spoken to enough witnesses directly myself where I'm not saying that like there's necessarily an easy, simple, prosaic explanation for everything, like for every single UFO sighting out there. There may not even be those explanations for every single military sighting that has come to light so far. It just, again, from what I've seen, the evidence that I've seen directly in covering this, it's not super compelling. The only parts of it that would be compelling are the parts that nobody is ever like able to verify, except for the tiny handful of people who are saying they've spoken to like these secretive, government sources. And they'll always tell you about like all of this evidence that exists that none of us ever get to see. And so it's, and then you bring that up and people get real insulted. Like they're really upset. Like, oh, why would they put their credibility on the line? And how dare you question them? And like, look, man, like any real honest person with a serious interest in this stuff, if they were telling you to believe in the existence of this evidence that they won't show you, I mean, they should be the first people going like, hey, look, I know this sounds crazy and there's no reason for you to believe this, but I'm telling you, this evidence is. But instead, they're like, "Oh no, how dare you doubt my sources? And these are legitimate, military personnel, and what's wrong with you?" And so it's like, look, right now the evidence we have is not compelling. It just isn't, and I wish it was different, because that would be awesome, but it's not, so it isn't.
Yeah. The whole UFO thing is like, so I, of course, am pretty much a cryptozoology focused person, but like even being in this field, like the UFO thing is so strong right now. It's still like you still see stuff that's coming in, and like George Knapp has a new book, and like supposedly like that's a ton of new information out
Always
now,
new
and
information.
it's crazy, man. It's absolutely crazy. I'm like, I gotta focus on Bigfoot stuff, or I'm like, I'm gonna get sucked in. Like the UFO stuff is amazing though. So I can't. It's got to be tough. Like you're constantly looking all over the place, but it seems like you can handle it pretty well, which is awesome. Um, like, I don't think even if I've asked you this before, because there is a previous interview. We did an interview a while back about really in detail about Mothman stuff. So I don't think I asked you this, but let's say someone is looking to get into like Fortean topics. Is there certain books that you would recommend for them to add to their bookshelf?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, let me see if it's handy. I like my collected works of Charles Fort.
Mm,
It's it's an easier read than you would expect for something written like 100 years ago. And I can't stress enough like the importance of being familiar with Fort, because if you look at honestly all of your favorite paranormal writers today, or that most people have read and are into, John Keel, Lauren Coleman,
yeah.
Brad, all of these different guys. The reason I learned about Charles Fort was by reading these other authors growing up, and they,
Hmm.
every once in a while you would hear somebody use like the term Fortean, or like they would reference Charles Fort, and I'd be like, who the hell is that, right? And so it inspired me to look into it and discover Charles Fort and his work. And it is my firm belief that you cannot understand the work of people, especially somebody like John Keel. You can't understand it. You think you can, but trust me, you don't, unless you've read Charles Fort, because you need to understand the inspiration behind many of the ideas that these other authors have now. It's sort of like if
I
you were
love
to
that.
teach a class about this stuff, Fort would have to be required reading. Like any other class you've ever taken, you have to start at the beginning of this field of study to be able to teach people about its history, uh, accurately. And that's Charles Fort all day. And the other part of that is like, okay, well, I've read these other authors, and sort of heard their opinions on things. And since they were clearly influenced so heavily by Charles Fort, why would I not want to go and read that no matter what? Like why wouldn't I be interested in this person who so clearly influenced everybody in this field, whether they know it or not. He's sort of the H.P. Lovecraft of the paranormal field,
Oh,
honestly.
interesting. Yeah.
Where like literally
Cool.
his stuff, it's in everything, whether you notice it or not. Now, if you're familiar with him, you recognize it everywhere. It's just like H.P. Lovecraft, where if you're familiar with Lovecraft, all of a sudden you're seeing his influence in literally every modern horror writer, from Stephen King to Clive Barker, to Neil Gaiman. Like he's everywhere, right? Now, if you didn't know who that was, you would think that they were just coming up with these ideas by themselves, free of influence, right? But once you know who Lovecraft is, you're like, oh, okay, like that's an interesting sort of take on something he introduced 100 years ago. Well, that's Charles Fort, like that's what he is to modern, paranormal or cryptozoological or ufological, whatever, in investigation and research. Like that's what he does. Once you learn to recognize his influence, it's everywhere. So
Hmm.
yeah, like number one, familiarize yourself with Charles Fort.
That is really good advice, and I think that same advice can be taken in that's like, it's important to be well read and read the stuff that is um the foundational pillars in the topic that you are looking to become well versed in. Like if it's Bigfoot, you're Renee DeHinden, John Green, even Lauren Coleman. It doesn't have to be books that are really old per se. Like figure out who are the foundational figures in your niche and really get to know that. Don't just focus on like I read this on Reddit, as we were saying before, right? But um near the end here, so we got a little bit of time left. So, audience, if you have any other questions, definitely put those in the chat. But I wanted to bring up a few maybe random high strangeness cryptid topics and just kind of get um your basic reaction to it, if you have any thoughts. And
Sure.
if you don't want to go super deep into it, but I'm curious to what your reaction is, being a guy who is constantly like investigating different things. Um, Dogman, specifically not Beast of Bray Road, but like the Kentucky stuff.
Okay. Well, I just honestly, my reaction to Dogman in general is sort of how, like you think about the descriptions of this thing, and it seems like a biological impossibility, right? Like,
Mm,
especially when people, for instance, like if if you've seen um, the depictions of Dogman, sort of, with the canine legs, and
yeah.
it's huge and sort of hulking, and it's got this canid head and everything. It doesn't seem possible, again, like within our current understanding of biology, right? Like, there's just so much about that doesn't make sense. Like those legs, for instance. Um, I don't know if do you have a dog? Because I have two, and they're terrible at standing up and walking around on those
No,
legs.
totally. Yeah.
Like, they're just not
Yeah.
made for it. It's not.
Yep.
It's not good. It's just it isn't useful when it comes to bipedal movement. And so like maybe their bone structure is different, because like you do see boy, like there's prosthetic legs that are sort of similar to that, and people can run with them pretty fast and stuff. But yeah, again, it just seems real weird. Now, I mean, all of that aside, because who knows? Like, yeah, maybe they evolved in a way where their bone structure somehow allows for these sort of idiosyncratic limbs and things. Um, Now, that being the case, you have to sort of get into the other questions of biology, right? So then you have to start thinking about breeding population, right, and food source and habitat and all this other
True.
stuff. And yeah, where do they live? What do they eat? Like there aren't dog species. There aren't any hidden dog species. You know what I mean? Like they're not a thing.
Yeah.
If there are dogs, because for instance, I live in southern Wisconsin, and we got a bunch of coyotes, and they're everywhere, and you can't avoid them. Um, and they're wild animals, but they're also right next to you, and they don't care, because dogs don't care. Like, canines don't care.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
they're like it doesn't make any sense. Not honestly, not that I think that there is a place where they could hide, because I don't really, but I, what would they hide? Like, what kind of canid species all of a sudden is just hiding from humanity? They just have a tendency to sort of blunder into things. But yeah, so none of that makes sense. It doesn't make sense. You think that you would notice the amount of food that they would have to eat missing. We would wonder why our deer population is so small. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, like there's a lot of different reasons. Like where would they live? People have posited that they live underground or something. Okay, yeah, like all those other canid species that live underground. That's a totally normal thing. No,
Right.
that
Yeah.
never happened. Like,
Yeah. I don't
what?
think so.
You live
Yeah.
underground? Why?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I think that, okay, now all of that aside, what are people seeing, right? Because there
True.
are some people who are very earnest in their testimony, and then you have to start thinking about, well, okay, obviously biologically this doesn't make any sense, but is there some other way that we can explain these sightings without contradicting the testimony of people trying to authentically relate their experience. And so then you have to get into, even weirder things. You have to start considering, things like entities that sort of interact through the medium of consciousness, that might be able to appear in a variety of forms. You might want to consider the idea that, certain people would be capable of, not physically changing shape necessarily, but sort of taking on the appearance of something like that through some spiritual mechanism or some, like previously sort of undiscovered mechanism that again isn't allowing for biological change, but does sort of allow them to appear as something like that. So you can get real weird with it, and you almost have to if you want to take Dogman seriously, because if you're taking it seriously, then you have to look at the biological stuff and be like, well, that's all out the window, because none of that makes sense. Yeah. So, what else can we come up with, no matter how weird, to start trying to make sense of that phenomenon, if you're willing to allow for the possibility that not everybody's lying, not everybody is mistaken, and at least some of the witnesses are authentically relating their experience.
I'll be honest, it's the one cryptid I hope is not real. Because if it is, then I can never go in the woods again, because it's straight, like, you never hear a, like, Dogman was being so nice and, like, was giving out high fives. Like, he's usually trying to kill everyone and he's having a really bad day. So
I feel like,
no thanks.
Okay, but what's the number of people we know to have been attacked or killed by Dogman so far? Is it zero? Because I feel like it's zero. Now,
now there's the big attack that happened in Land Between the Lakes, Kentucky, is the big one, and I want to say like it was pretty rough, and they say that it was a Dogman attack. I don't know. Obviously, I focus more on the Bigfoot stuff, but like that's the one that comes up all the time, is the Land Between the Lakes Dogman attack in Kentucky. So, but yeah, I guess maybe there hasn't been a ton of them. I don't know.
Right, I'm gonna have to go back and look that one up, because it's not ringing any bells right away. Is that like one of the ones where they have video of it chasing them or something?
I don't believe so.
Okay,
not that I've seen
somebody's story.
Yeah.
Okay,
but it's a rabbit hole for sure.
Gotcha.
Another one, and we'll end with this one. I feel like, what are your thoughts about like our culture's it almost feels like there's some weird like people getting all like hyped up about like giants in our culture. And have you seen this? Or maybe it's just I'm looking at weird stuff to do with high strangeness and I see all the weird stuff, but like, is that a thing that's like coming out of nowhere, or has it always been around? Do you think
it's not coming out of nowhere? That's a thing that's been around forever. And so really, what you're witnessing is sort of the intersection of Abrahamic religion and the paranormal field. And totally. So you've got people with from certain spiritual traditions or backgrounds.
Sure.
That have stories of giants, right? So you've got things like the Nephilim, right, and the Anunnaki and stuff in from the Abrahamic religions, and so I think those stories are very, very attractive to people. Now, I don't know, for instance, like I've never heard of anybody seeing like a living giant just running around. I mean, like taller than a basketball player, like an actual 10-foot tall giant, other than obviously, people reporting certain Bigfoot sightings, sometimes winged humanoid sightings. I'll talk about the 7 or 8 foot tall being or something. And certainly there's no shortage of people who want to try to connect those types of creature sightings to their own personal like religious beliefs,
Right.
which is a whole nother thing. But yeah, stories of people digging up giant skeletons. There was a persistent rumor of the Smithsonian like hiding proof of
Exactly.
giant skeletons having been found. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I mean, the Smithsonian is known for like not.
I mean, they do some
informing-
weird stuff. Yeah.
No, it's literally like, yes, that's anathema to their purpose. But anyway, yeah. So I think again, like without going into a ton of detail, because it is a huge, a sort of sub genre of the paranormal is these giants, right?
Sure.
And from what I have seen, it's very much sort of the kind of thing that people want to exist to justify their religious beliefs and sort of add some kind of like physical evidence to add credibility to those beliefs.
That is really interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting viewpoint on it for sure. I don't hear a lot of that. I actually haven't heard that talked about, but yeah, that I could see how that could make sense. Yeah, very cool. Do you think that will there ever be a Lake Michigan Mothman Part 2?
Maybe.
Maybe. I mean, there's reports coming in all the time, right?
There are
Yeah.
definitely. Well, the thing is, now I covered all of the reports that we took personally and were able to actually go out and investigate. Like I put those in Strange Tales of the Impossible, but that doesn't rule out a second Lake Michigan Mothman. It's entirely possible that that we'll get to the point where I'll feel like it's necessary again. But I don't have any plans right now. What I would probably do first, honestly, is a second edition of the book we have now.
Okay. Yeah.
And maybe just add in like a chapter on the O'Hare stuff or something.
Oh, that would be cool.
I think that would basically catch people up. And
that would be cool.
Fun. So
awesome. So Tobias, has been super fun chatting with you tonight, and thank you for answering some of the questions we had come in and just chatting about all sorts of stuff to do with cryptids, Mothman, and high strangeness and everything. Fortean, it's been a super fun time. Do you mind telling the listeners how they can keep up to date with what you're doing? What are the best ways of doing that?
Sure. So, if you're interested in what we do, you can always follow the Singular Fortean Society on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Tumblr. You can always visit our website, of course, at singularfortean.com. And if you decide that you're interested enough in what we do that you want to be a part of it, you can find us at patreon.com/singularfortean.
Rockin'. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for hanging out tonight, Tobias, and people in the chat. Thank you for hanging out with us live. Listeners, you can always go to Bigfoot Society on YouTube, and every Friday at 8 p.m. Central, you can be live with us and put your question in the chat. But thanks so much for spending your Friday night with us, and have a good one, guys.